Good morning. We believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, self-existence cause. This one manifests itself in and through all creation, but is not absorbed by its creation. The manifest universe is the body of God. It is logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-knowingness of God. We believe in the individualization of spirit in us, that all people are individualizations of the one spirit. We believe in the internality and the immortality and the continuity of the individual soul forever and ever expanding. We believe that heaven is within us and that we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. We believe the ultimate goal of life is to become complete freedom from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be obtained by all. We believe in the unity of all life, that the highest God and the innermost God is one God. We believe that God is personal to all who feel this indwelling presence. We believe in the direct revelation of truth through our intuitive and spiritual nature, and that anyone may become a revealer of truth who lives in close contact with this indwelling God. We believe that the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God, and that we are surrounded by this creative mind which receives the direct impress of our thoughts and acts upon them. We believe in the healing of the sick and control of conditions through the power of this mind. We believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of all life. We believe in our own soul, our own spirit, and our own destiny, for we understand that the life of all is God. These are the principles of the science of mind philosophy. Ernest Holmes wrote that Declaration of Principles, also known as What We Believe, for the first issue of the Science Mind magazine that was published in 1927. What We Believe has been included in that magazine for the last 88 years in every issue. So today we're exploring the concept of humility as spiritual practice. I think practicing humility is a very powerful and life-changing concept. But first I want us to get on board with a couple of definitions so that we're on the same page. So this is an interactive talk today. So we'll do the opposite of what I think humility is, and the opposite to me would be humiliation. So what do you think humiliation means? Monica?
Embarrassed?
Embarrassed, yes. I didn't catch your name. Sophie. Humiliation for you. What's that? Embarrassed?
Being made to feel small or worthless or inadequate.
Small and worthless and inadequate, yes. Yes, and the dictionary is the action of humiliating someone or the state of being humiliated. And the synonyms: embarrassment, mortification, shame, indignity, and great disgrace. So an example is they suffered the humiliation of losing the opening round. So some examples. So humiliation was quite an interesting topic to research while I was doing this. And public humiliation has been around for centuries. Remember in the in the olden days, the stock, when they had the guy with the wooden thing and everybody came by and shamed him. throw the rotten tomatoes and the lettuces, and, you know, public humiliation, hangings, shaving heads. And as recent as 1944 in France, in Paris, any French women that were thought to be consorting with the Germans during the war were shaved, their heads were shaved, and they were forced to march down the streets barefoot. So it's something that we've done in our culture for a long time. And thieves had their faces tattooed, and prostitutes have been paraded down the streets. And I think at one time they even did like the scarlet letter on their forehead for adulterers. Today, most of forms of this is considered cruel and unusual punishment and is therefore outlawed, but some forms still exist. Can you think of any other examples of public humiliation or shaming that we do? Yes. I'm going to talk about that. Yes, that is a huge, huge problem these days, isn't it? What about rites of passage at universities, trying to get into the frat house or the sorority house? I mean, that is still very common in the United States particularly. I mean, they've got a lot of things like that. India still practices it with the women who are considered or thought to be adulterers or some other things, right? And can even result in death for them. What about personal humiliations? Making errors in public. Have you ever been somewhere and loudly proclaimed, "Did you try those potatoes? They were disgusting." And then realized the person that brought them was sitting right beside you? Oh my God, right? Yeah, we've all experienced some kind of humiliation. Has anybody had that experience? Yeah. There's the dunce cap. Remember in the cartoons they had the dunce cap, right? Like, how effective is that form of public humiliation? Or writing lines on the board at school. "I will not talk in class. I will not." Anybody here had to do that? Yeah. Oh yeah, Susan. More than once, I think. And an interesting thing. Pardon me?
We were sent outside the door.
Yes.
We walked past everyone in the class and stand outside the door. And one time it happened to me, the principal happened to walk up the stairs and see me standing outside the door.
So embarrassing. It is. It's very embarrassing and shaming in a way, isn't it? And we never forget that, right? It's like just like yesterday, right? The feeling of that.
Because I've never done anything wrong, right? So when the teacher, this particular teacher, said, "Who was laughing?" Because it was me, right? And I remember her mouth going, yeah, I still remember it.
Yeah, it's very true. And of course, as somebody mentioned earlier, the online humiliation. Viral ridicule, they call it. Bullying, making people wrong. And of course, where there's huge consequences with suicides of teens and gays. And I would say the first real, most recent public humiliation online was Monica Lewinsky and her affair with the president. Even 16 years later, she is experiencing the consequence of that public shaming. She's unemployable. Nobody will hire her. What about the other party in that experience? He still travels the world, public speaks, and is
Running for president.
you know, and it's quite interesting. So there's a huge disparity in public humiliation, particularly that viral ridicule. And is it mob mentality when people join in? Now, what about the flip of that? So if that's that one side of humiliation, and then we have the other side, which is humility. So what does, anybody have a definition of what they think humility is? So it could be a modest or low view of one's importance, a humbleness. Meekness, unassertive. I'm not assertive. You know people like that, right? That are just like, well, you want to just shake them, right? Stand up for yourself. So that's one aspect of humility. So if we summarize our definitions of humiliation is embarrassment, that's a mild form. Shame is a severe form of humiliation. And humility is being modest, like an ego deflation, kind of like just being modest, and or unassertive, which is like a low view of oneself. So can we agree on those definitions? So let's see some examples of this. Tell me if this is a humiliating experience or humility in action. Picking up all the garbage, I was thinking of my friend here, along the road as you go for your morning walk. Is that humiliating or is that humility?
No, it depends on the perspective. Like, I mean, if you're doing it without wanting the recognition and the pat on the head.
Exactly.
You know.
Beautiful. That's a great.
But if you want the you're so good, then it's not humility, or you know what I'm trying to say.
I know exactly what you, no, that's exactly right. There's a quote actually, if you think you have humility, you just lost it. Okay, what about that drunk phone call to the boss telling them what you really think? That's humiliating. Stupid, right? Okay. Or how about showing up at a party wearing a Playboy bunny outfit and nobody else is dressed up? Humiliating. You get the point. Does anybody here have an example in their own life or somebody else that they know, if they want to remain anonymous, of humbleness or humiliation that they'd like to share? I was first introduced to the concept of humility when I joined a 12-step program. And I definitely did not like the idea of being modest or meek at all. In fact, it took quite a bit of time for me to see that this could be a good thing. But once I got a definition of humility that I could agree with, I had an aha moment. So this is the definition that works for me. Humility amounts to a clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. I like that. I could get behind that. And from this definition, I could see that my old behaviors and patterns of living weren't really serving me, and that it was clear, that was the clear recognition of who and what I was in that moment and how I was acting. But the good news was, I didn't have to stay like that for the rest of my life. I could sincerely attempt to become a better version of me. And what I subsequently learned by coming into the teaching of science of mind is not that I had to become anything, because I was already perfect, whole, and complete. That's the sort of tag phrase that we use, isn't it? I just had to reveal that truth to myself and to others. There's an old drinking and driving commercial that I absolutely love. It's the opening scene is somebody driving, and then there's the windshield there, and then off screen there's somebody who is taking a drink and then putting the glass in front of the windshield, and then they take another drink and put another glass in front, and then another drink put the glass in front. And the more the glasses get in front of the windshield, the worse the vision for the driver. It's a wonderful example to me of how I apply that is through our is about our belief systems. We develop some beliefs as we move along in our lives, and they're layered upon layer upon layer in front of us, inside our brains, inside our bodies. And those beliefs really block the truth about us, don't they? I mean, some of those beliefs are great. I'm a great dancer, or I'm a great singer, like our beautiful Tracy. And some of those beliefs maybe not so happy, like, I didn't do that very well. I can't do it. I'm not athletic at all. I can't do math. I can't draw. So those are some of the things that happen. Those are the beliefs that we embrace and believe and stand by. I mean, as an accountant, I get people all the time that come up to me and say, oh, I don't do math. Like, they just say that. It's like a definite, permanent fixture in their lives, right? And I was like that with drawing. I was like shamed. There's a good example. I was shamed as a girl at school drawing a picture of a horse. Ha, 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 that's a terrible horse. I never drew for many years, even though I love art. And I overcame that, and today I actually make really, this is not humble, I make great pictures. So what about the principles of science of mind? We teach consciousness and using our minds. And two of the principles of those declarations of principles that I spoke about, I think, are the ones that I wanted to bring up today. Was we believe that heaven is within us, and we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. And we believe the ultimate goal in life to be complete freedom from all discord of any nature, and that this goal is to be surely attained by all. But I've got a bunch of beer glasses in front of me. And so how can I get that truth? Because my vision is blurred. How much of that heaven am I experiencing? And how much freedom am I experiencing if I think I can't do things? One of the main platforms is our awareness of universal consciousness and the power to think for ourselves. And through the one mind, we have that direct experience of God. Whereas in religion, people are taught what to believe. And so they experience God through external acts of virtue. So to experience God in a religious organization, I must be humble, I must be good, meek, mild, servient. Those concepts never really worked for me. I never wanted to be meek or servient. When we question our beliefs, we recognize that we are not our beliefs, we're not our possessions. That's when we have power. We are mind, and within us, we are consciousness. Now, what about that mind? Science has studied the elusive mind for over a century now, and is beginning to amass concrete evidence of how our minds work. The mainstream thinking today of change your mind, change your thinking, change your life has become very commonplace, hasn't it? More and more people have heard of these concepts and implemented strategies at home and at work. However, one of the problems facing people today with change your mind, change your life is overcoming their old beliefs. Those neural pathways in our brains are pretty deeply ingrained, aren't they? And many of us have tried to make a change in our lives only to end up feeling hopeless. Like, I'm going to go on that diet on Monday, and then Tuesday, and then the next Monday, and then and a year goes by and it's still the same thing. Setting goals on New Year's, anyone? For me, I was all about the goals. Way back in the early 80s, I attended a motivational speaking event with Jim Rohn, and he had this great idea of sowing and reaping and using the concepts of the seasons of the year to express his philosophy. Oh boy, I grabbed that and I started sowing all kinds of seeds. And I was going to lose weight, I was going to get a great job, I was going to be a better housekeeper, I was going to love my husband more. Oh wait, I was going to be rich and famous. So each year, I kept doing my goals. And weirdly, after about 5 years, it was the same bloody list. bloody sorry. I mean, it was the same darn list. What was wrong with me? Setting goals and resolutions just don't work. I was feeling humiliated and ashamed, and I was all by myself. Nobody even knew that I was doing this. I should be able to make changes, right? I must be weak or stupid. I mean, that's what I thought. Anybody else had a similar experience to that? So how do we transform our lives? We know so much more today about quantum physics, which explains the behavior of matter and its interactions with energy. How about epigenetics and how our genes interact with our bodies? And neuroscience has exploded with new information on the neural pathways being created and how it all works together. So one example of how new neurotransmitters are crossing the synapses and binding to neuroreceptors, big words. So let's have a demonstration. I need 4 people up here, please. We got 2, 3, 1 more, please. Tina, that's great. Okay, 2, you're number 1, you're number 1. Now you 2, okay, you're gonna stand fairly close together. Oh, no, facing each other.
Okay.
And then you're gonna stay, not so close together. Okay. Maybe we'll turn sideways so the people can see this. Okay. Yes, okay. So, this is a familiar old thought. So this is like I can't change something. What can't we change? I can't change my bank statement. I can't change my bank statement, okay? So this is the neuroreceptor, and this is the neuro that's coming over. I got to get the right words. Transmitter. And this in between is the synapses. And so there's a little gap here. And so the thought's going to come over. I can't do it. I can't get my bank statement, right? Right. Okay. Very familiar, very close together. Now we have the new statement. I can change my bank statement. It's a new thought though, so it's quite far apart. You see, it's got more of a gap. So now this is the physics of it. On the count of 3, they're going to throw the tape to each other. It's supposed to be a ball, but I don't have any balls. I don't have balls. Sorry. Anyways, which thought is going to get there first? 1, 2, 3.
This one.
Right. So, in order to counteract this activity of my new I can change my bank statement versus I can't, which is the default short, boy, that fires fast, that gets there quickly. This one, we need to consciously activate this thought and practice and take a step forward and take a step forward and take a step forward. I can make my bank change. I can make my bank change until you're really close and poof, what happens? And that one goes further apart. Exactly. Thank you to my volunteers. Oh yeah. I'll bring the tape home. It was borrowed. No. So that's our science experiment for this morning. We can close the gap so the neurotransmitters can get to the receptors and easily change the old for the new.
Would this be kind of like a mantra when you say it over and over and over and over?
Exactly. It does get closer together because you see the neural pathway, the old one is quite grown in there, like it's like a circuit that goes around and it quickly fires. So we have to consciously think that thought and move it so that it comes closer, and this one, less activity, it's not going to be as close. So and it's scientifically proven. Like they've done the science on this. Tons of research. that actually is what happens in our brains. So we begin to see ourselves, the real self, when we do this kind of activity. So what do we get? More heaven and more freedom. So it's true, humility amounts to a clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. Now, to add a supercharge to this thinking process that I just demonstrated, we combine it with our emotions. Joe Dispenza, from his book, "You Are the Placebo, Making Your Mind Matter," this is a quote, "You must combine a clear intention with an elevated emotion that conditions your body to believe that the future potential that you selected from the quantum field has already happened." The elevated emotion is vital because only when your choice carries an amplitude of energy that's greater than the hardwired programs in your brains and the emotional addiction in your body will you be able to change your brain's circuitry and your body's genetic expression, as well as recondition your body to a new mind, erasing any trace of the old neurocircuitry and conditioning. That is amazing. I have a great example in my own life of how this has happened for me. After living in Kelowna for a number of years, I found the perfect neighborhood. And so I would go down there and I would drive up. It was like about 12-block neighborhood. And I'd drive up and down the streets and I'd look at all the houses. I'd love to live in that house. Oh, look at that house there. I love that house. It's so close to the beach and it's got a little corner store. Look, there's a park there. And so I would drive up and down and I'd go there regularly. And I actually even took people there. Look, this is where I'm going to live. I just loved it. And then along came that magical day when one of the houses went up for sale. And I was so excited, called the realtor. I want to do a deal. But I already owned a house. And so what was I going to do? I was going to make the deal subject to selling my other house. No problem. Realtor says, that's a problem. The deal won't go through unless you take that subject to financing off. But I have to have that on. But I decided, act of faith, I won't put it on because we could hardly afford our first house. We didn't have very good credit at the time. But the magic of life, right? When we set those intentions, who knew you could own 2 houses at the same time? I didn't. I got my little dream house. It was wonderful, and it was so close to the lake. So, in summary, we have a beautiful teaching. It's not just about saying words by rote. It's about transforming our lives. We need to override those preconditioned programmings of the old patterns. To use scientific methods like training our brains, utilizing the energies of the emotions, and our commitment to freeing our minds of limitations. All those beer glasses, right? Let's get rid of those. When we do that, we really do experience heaven on earth and a deep freedom from humiliation and shame. Remember that online humiliation? Well, here's one father's solution. He's the father of a young woman who committed suicide from online shaming, and he's made it his mission to educate young people about how pervasive and damaging it is. His solution is as follows. I believe it starts with the young people, says Canning. He maintains that we need a mass movement to recalibrate our collective moral code, along the lines of what Mothers Against Drunk Driving did. They accomplished that in the 80s. They changed the entire conversation. They made it so that if someone went to a bar and had 2 drinks and was walking out to their cars, people would be like, what the H are you doing? No one feels sorry for a drunk driver anymore. And we need to start doing that with victims. with people who shame the victims. How could you be saying something so mean? How could you do something so mean? I think that's a movement that we can all get behind. And that's my call to action for all of us. Not only does our teaching help us transform, but we influence and transform the whole world. One thought at a time, one day at a time, we get this done. Thank you. Namaste.